They're banned in Egypt, declared a terror group in Middle Eastern countries, and credited with inspiring Islamist insurgencies across the globe. Why? Because long before groups like Hamas or Al-Qaeda, the Muslim Brotherhood helped fuse political power with religious fundamentalism, turning Islam into a tool for revolution. And yet, the Brotherhood is still growing, not only in the Middle East, but in Europe and even parts of the United States, where some of its biggest supporters wear suits, not robes. So, how did a group outlawed by much of the Muslim world become a powerful force in the West? Nearly a century after its founding, the Muslim Brotherhood is no longer just an Egyptian movement. It's one of the most influential Islamist networks in the world. Born in 1928, the Brotherhood began as a small but radical movement calling for a return to what it saw as pure Islam, rejecting Western influence, secularism, and modernity. Its founder, Hassan al-Banna, didn't just want spiritual renewal. He wanted an Islamic society governed by Sharia law from the ground up. The big question, though, how to get there. Today, the Brotherhood spans continents, with branches that range from political parties and charities to armed militias and extremist offshoots. It's helped ignite revolutions, fuel civil wars, and laid the ideological blueprint for Hamas, Al-Qaeda, and even ISIS. Wherever there are Muslim communities, from Cairo to Copenhagen, you'll likely find traces of the Brotherhood. It operates through schools, mosques, NGOs, hospitals, and student groups. Some focus on education and welfare. Others have been accused of spreading hate, enforcing gender segregation, undermining liberal democratic values, and promoting terror. In Gaza, the connection isn't subtle. Hamas openly calls itself the Palestinian branch of the Muslim Brotherhood. Hamas's charter is steeped in Brotherhood ideology, combining Islamist goals with armed resistance. In Turkey, the ruling party emerged from the Brotherhood's ideological roots, blending religious revivalism with nationalist ambition. Turkish President Erdogan often echoes Brotherhood-style rhetoric, framing Islam as a force for political dominance. And in Qatar, the Brotherhood has found one of its most powerful allies. The Qatari government has given Brotherhood leaders refuge, funded sympathetic organizations, and used its state-run media, like Al Jazeera, to amplify Brotherhood-aligned voices across the Arab world. But not everyone's on board. Since the 1930s, the Muslim Brotherhood has steadily expanded its reach across the Middle East, Europe, Asia, Africa, and the United States, often sparking fierce debate. Some Western governments have seen the Brotherhood as a lesser evil, a way to engage political Islam without having to deal with the kind of extremists made famous for filming themselves removing super important parts of people's bodies. But others see in the Brotherhood something far more dangerous. I know, ominous. Right-wing parties in France, the Netherlands, and Italy argue that the Brotherhood is a gateway ideology, presenting a moderate face in public while quietly promoting more extreme ideas behind the scenes. Countries like Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE have declared the Brotherhood a terror group, accusing it of trying to destabilize their governments and societies. In their eyes, the Brotherhood isn't just an ideological threat, it's a very real, physical threat. So, why does this matter? I'm so glad you asked, because there are about 2 billion Muslims in the world, and the Muslim Brotherhood plays an outsized role in defining what Islam means in public life, in politics, in international relations. The Brotherhood doesn't speak for all Muslims, but its voice is loud and carries far. To understand the politics of the Middle East and the chants of US college protesters, you have to understand the Muslim Brotherhood. Now, I want to be clear. Like Christianity and Judaism, Islam is not a monolith. One size does not fit all. Islam's sacred texts, the Quran, the Hadith, and centuries of interpretation have produced a rich and diverse tradition. Still, all Muslims accept 5 shared principles known as the 5 pillars of Islam, which I will now mispronounce for the pleasure of our Arabic-speaking viewers. Shahada, declaration of faith. Salah, daily prayer. Zakat, giving to the poor. Sawm, fasting during Ramadan. Hajj, pilgrimage to Mecca. What's missing from this list? A word almost every non-Muslim has heard, but I can't say here. But It sounds like mihad and translates as struggle. This concept of struggle varies widely, ranging from an inner spiritual struggle, see Sufi Islam, to militant campaigns to defend or expand Islam, see Wahhabism. And it's exactly this ambiguity that groups like the Brotherhood exploit for political ends. Because from its very beginnings, Islam was not just a belief system. It was a political order. The Prophet Muhammad wasn't just a spiritual guide. He was a head of state, military commander, diplomat, and lawgiver. After Muhammad, his successors, the caliphs, took over as both religious and political leaders. They led prayers, ruled courts, and commanded armies. Their empire, the Islamic Caliphate, eventually stretched from Spain to India. Of course, this wasn't unique to Islam. For most of human history, religion and politics were inseparable. The idea that faith should be a private matter, that religion and state should be separate, is a Western invention developed in Europe and America over the last 300 years, alongside the idea of human rights and Twinkies. And even those most important and universal secular values often spread not through dialogue, but through conquest, colonization, and cultural dominance. Especially Twinkies. So when the Brotherhood and other Islamists reject Western democracy, they're not just rejecting policy, they're rejecting a whole worldview that separates religion and politics. By the early 20th century, many Muslims saw Western values not just as foreign, but as tools of colonial domination and the weakening of Islam. So, in 1928, in a small Egyptian town, a 22-year-old school teacher founded a modest movement with a powerful slogan: Islam is the solution.
Simple but significant.
He believed Islam was not just a religion, but a complete system for life, law, and governance. He called his movement the Muslim Brotherhood. Al-Banna's vision was shaped by decades of European occupation, the rise of secular nationalism, and what many saw as the moral decay of Arab societies under Western rule. The Brotherhood's strategy? Grassroots activism, building schools, clinics, mosques, and charities to rebuild Muslim society from the ground up. As European powers installed secular regimes across the Arab world, public frustration among ordinary Muslims grew, and the Brotherhood's message caught fire. It sped rapidly across the Middle East, and eventually into Europe, North America, Asia, and Africa. Some chapters stayed peaceful, others turned radical. But by the late 1970s, the Brotherhood's influence had hit a kind of glass ceiling. Outlawed and persecuted in Egypt and across the Arab world, the Brotherhood was pushed underground. But some of its younger members grew restless and wanted to take up arms. In the 80s and 90s, Islamist insurgencies erupted in Egypt, Algeria, and beyond, often inspired by or splintered from the Brotherhood. The human cost reached hundreds of thousands. As crackdowns intensified, many Islamists fled, some to Europe, others to the mountains of Afghanistan, where a new war was brewing. There, in the fight against the Soviet Union, a new network took shape, featuring Brotherhood-linked figures like Egyptian Ayman al-Zawahiri, Saudi Arabian Osama bin Laden, and Palestinian Abdullah Azzam. Together, they formed Al-Qaeda, the group behind the 9/11 attacks. After 9/11 and the US wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, a new generation of militants emerged. From the chaos of Iraq and Syria, they built ISIS, a self-declared caliphate that brought medieval brutality into the modern world. The leader of ISIS had once been a Brotherhood member, but like others, he rejected its caution, claiming the movement cared more about theory than action. Then came the Arab Spring. As protests swept across the Arab world, Egypt's military-backed president was overthrown, and for the first time in decades, free elections were held in Egypt. The Brotherhood was ready. Their political wing, the Freedom and Justice Party, won nearly half of the seats in parliament and the presidency. It was a historic moment, but it didn't last. The new president quickly moved to consolidate power and empower Islamist institutions. Within a year, mass protests erupted against Brotherhood rule. The military stepped in, removed them from power, and declared the group a terror organization. But the Brotherhood's power grab in Egypt wasn't an anomaly. In fact, The Palestinian branch had already pulled it off, and with greater success. See, back in 1987, the Brotherhood's branch in Gaza rebranded itself as Hamas, the Islamic Resistance Movement. Hamas's charter declared armed struggle the only solution, framing the Israeli-Palestinian conflict as a religious war, and calling Jews the enemies of Islam. I know, original. So, when Fatah, a secular Palestinian faction, entered peace talks with Israel, Hamas launched a wave of deadly attacks explicitly aimed at derailing any deal. Long story short, and I know I'll suffer for it in the comments, in 2005, Israel dismantled all the Jewish settlements in Gaza and completely withdrew its military. For a generation, the claim had been that settlements were the obstacle to peace between Israelis and Palestinians. So, Israel removed that obstacle from Gaza, hoping to open the door for peace. Instead, Hamas won elections, seized full control, gave Fatah the boot, and has ruled Gaza with an iron fist ever since. Hamas has run Gaza as an Islamist state, flying the Brotherhood's flag, enforcing harsh religious laws, and keeping the struggle against Israel alive. And then came October 7th. Hamas's ruthlessness shocked the world and renewed attention on its Brotherhood roots. For many, it proved that Hamas isn't just a resistance group. It's the clearest example of what happens when the Brotherhood takes power. From this perspective, Israel is the canary in the coal mine, and that coal mine extends far beyond Gaza. In Turkey, Erdogan's ruling party is reshaping the country in line with Brotherhood-style Islamism, hosting exiled leaders, promoting Hamas, embracing religious nationalism, and weakening democracy. In Qatar, the Brotherhood finds its wealthiest patron. Qatar funds Brotherhood-aligned institutions, grants refuge to Brotherhood leaders, and uses Al Jazeera to promote their worldview to hundreds of millions of people and any house pets that happen to be watching. But not all Muslim-majority states are headed in that direction. In Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE, the Brotherhood is banned, labeled a terror group. The UAE has gone even further, promoting religious tolerance, peace with Israel, and pluralistic education, a sharp contrast to the Brotherhood's rigid ideology. And even within the Brotherhood, there's still a spectrum epitomized by the leader of the Brotherhood in Israel. Mansour Abbas leads the Brotherhood-affiliated Ra'am party. He became the first Muslim Israeli to join a governing coalition, and he was among the first Muslim leaders worldwide to condemn the October 7th assault as morally unacceptable. What Abbas shows is that the Middle East conflict isn't a struggle between Islam and the West. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict isn't a battle of Western colonialism in Muslim lands. These conflicts are more fundamentally a struggle within Islam, between those who believe Muslims should focus on the struggle of the heart and those who want to fight the struggle of the sword. Case in point, most of the victims of the Muslim Brotherhood's struggle of the sword are Muslims themselves.